I want to, first of all, introduce our Board of Trustees, those who are here, and actually I kind of came in the back door, so I'm not sure who's here. But Matt already mentioned Abel Guillén, or actually it was James. Abel Guillén, we have Nikki Gonzalez-Ewing, we have Linda Handy out there somewhere. We have Meredith Brown somewhere. Cy Galassa is our board president. Bill Withrow is on our board. And Bill Riley, they're out there somewhere. They're invited to our lunch, so I know they'll come when the food is served. I also want to introduce our student trustees, Sharon Clegg, who I think is here, and Wai Lai, I think is also here. So I want to welcome them to our Flex Day at the Peralta District. I also want to introduce our college presidents. I know they're here because I'm here. We have, and I want to thank Dr. Elnora Webb, the Laney College president. She's here. I saw her earlier, and I want to thank her for hosting this event in the college. Oh, there you are. And we have Dr. Debbie Budd from Berkeley City College over here as well. We have from Merritt College, Dr. Norma Ambris Calavis. Where's Norma? Oh, there's Norma. You better be here. And then we have our interim president for College of Alameda, Eric Gravenberg. Where's Eric? There's Eric. See, that round of applause, I know Eric is bucking to be permanent president, so he's got everybody right behind him. I know Eric, how it works, you know. But anyway, as Matt has mentioned, I just completed my first year as chancellor. I didn't think I could make it through the first year, but thanks to Cynthia Carrera and her Manhattan recipe, I've been able to drink my way through this, and we're here again. Last year at this time, I talked to you about my priorities, and those priorities, oh no, not that, take that off. It's not about the beach, although life is beach. But I talked to you about my priorities, and you recall, and it's already been mentioned, of course, the burning imperatives for me were accreditation, and we have certainly completed that hurdle of getting full accreditation to all of our 4 colleges, and I think that deserves a round of applause. It was amazing, the work that was done by you all 4 colleges, the faculty and staff, to get those reports in on time. Despite of my pressure, I pressured all the college presidents. I mean, I even had Dr. Webb mad at me for a while, but she too came through, as all the college presidents. We came through, and the district came through with the resolving all the recommendations. And once again, we're all happy that we have been restored full accreditation for our 4 colleges. But as Matt says, that accreditation is really part of the fabric of our institution, so it doesn't really start and end, it just continues. And I'll talk about that in a little while. The other burning imperative was budget and finance. Part of it had to do with our accreditation recommendations and auditing findings that we have reconciled. I want to thank the Finance Office, particularly Vice Chancellor Gerhardt, for all his work to reconcile those finance items. We also, of course, as Matt mentioned, were fortunate that not only did we pass Proposition 30 around the state, but locally we passed Measure B, which was a parcel tax that helped us restore not only sections, but all of that is helping us bring back at least 20 to 40 faculty and classified staff. We're in the process of hiring new people, and that is, of course, important for all of us to do our work. So I want to thank you all for your work with Proposition 30, for your work in Measure B, and we will all benefit from that work. So thank you again. And then, of course, we've also, as you know, this last year, fully implemented our budget allocation model. And that budget allocation model is trying to create an equitable distribution of our funding to colleges according to their FTES. We, of course, have glitches in that system, but we will each year evaluate the model and try to improve it. We'll be having a planning and budget summit later next week so we can address improving that model, and I'm looking forward to being part of that. And hopefully in our shared governance environment, we work together to improve that model. And finally, the next area last year as a priority was our technology. As many of you know, our technology platform, PeopleSoft, was created many challenges for us, have it to be productive and become the tool that we needed, not only in the classroom, but certainly in our administrative offices. And finally, I think I'm probably safe to say that I may be the first chancellor in 10 years to tell you that we are progressing positively with our IT, our technology. We had just completed our systems upgrade to PeopleSoft. We are moving into the various student services, student support modules, and I think that now we have a cadre of IT professionals among our managers in technology and the staff that we're going to make quantum leaps, in my estimation, with technology. And this coming year, as I'll talk about in a little while, is another opportunity for us to get it right and to serve our students and to serve our faculty and staff. So thank you for that. So we've made a lot of progress this last year. And as James mentioned, you know, part of that, what is that? Oh, you know, one of the benefits of being chancellor is that you can look at a picture of a faculty member and tease them without, you know, getting ramifications from PFT. So there you see Rick, and I've been meaning to tease Rick about his glasses that are about 50 years old in style. So Rick, we need to modernize your glasses. So, you know, for next year, as we look at next year, and I don't want to talk too long because we have a special guest here today. Next year, once again, we're looking at accreditation. It's so important that we do not lose the momentum that we've had with our accreditation success. And in spite of what our colleague Matt Goldstein has alluded to, I know that the Accreditation Commission is being challenged at many fronts, but the fact of the matter is that the Accreditation Commission is not going away, and accreditation is not going away. And in fact, accreditation, in my estimation, is what makes us better. And this coming cycle, our next accreditation visit to each one of the colleges is going to be in the spring of 2015. That's not that far away, and it requires a diligent planning process. It requires a diligent self-evaluation or self-study by each of the colleges. And I really ask that all of you consider stepping up and participating in these processes, because we do not want this past accreditation cycle and our success this past year for people to look at that as a fluke, to look at it as, oh, well, Peralta just got through, and now our next cycle, we're going to revert with what we used to be. Well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to revert to what we used to be. We're going to be better, and we're going to avoid the transgressions that were cited in our past cycle, and all of us are part of that. So I commend you for participation. I commend you for being part of the Peralta legacy that we're trying to create here during my tenure. So that's coming down the pike. Be ready. The other area that's been mentioned also this morning, and I'll let our State Chancellor speak to it, that is student success. That's going to be our focus, student success and the completion agenda. It is so important, not only from our local community, but statewide. And I know that we are challenged by an infrastructure that we need to have in place in order to fulfill the student success agenda. But we are working on that infrastructure, and as the Oz principle would say, we cannot let an infrastructure be an excuse for not providing the support to our students so that they are successful. We will be talking more about that throughout the year as we come together in our shared governance environment to determine what's the best course of action for student success. And then finally, John Bean. Where's John Bean? Is he here? Well, I've always wanted to ask John about that mustache. What's with that mustache, John? And I could say that to John because I hired John about 10 years ago, so. And besides, he's out in the field. I think he's towing the line out there. Anyway, our next agenda for this year is also technology. I mentioned we are making great progress with PeopleSoft and that platform. We expect to have the financial aid module in place for the spring of 2014. We expect to have our student education plans online. We expect to have our registration process online, be more efficient and more effective. So again, technology this year is going through a transition that we all are going to benefit from by the end of our fiscal year. And then finally, there's student service leadership. Again, James touched on this. One of my vision when I first came here, as I shared with you last year, was what I saw the need for we as the Peralta Colleges, both faculty, staff, administrators, all of us, was a service leadership and providing service to our students, and then actually a service to each other. The way I put it was, we do the right thing and do things right. So as we had some in-service training a couple of weeks ago where we looked at how do we provide service, and we all understand that service for our students is best seen by the lens of the students. So what is it that students want? What is it that students expect from us, not only in the classroom, but certainly in our offices and the support systems that we provide them? That is looking at service through the lens of the student. Actually, there's a slide before that. Where is it? It's very important for us to understand intolerable service exists because intolerable service is tolerated. We cannot tolerate intolerable service. We want to be the best we can be, to coin a phrase. And at Peralta, we want to create a legacy of service, a legacy of doing the right thing and doing things right. And I know that we've already started down that path. I know our faculty, as Matt has mentioned, is committed and devoted to our students. And that commitment and devotion means that the students get what they want and what they expect. So with that, I want to thank you all for being part of the Peralta legacy, whether you're in the classroom or in your offices. And as has been expressed, I want you to have a great year. And if there's anything I can do for you, please, you know where to find me. Thank you. Now I get the distinct pleasure, and of course you don't want to hear me all day, so I get the distinct pleasure of introducing our special keynote speaker, and that is Dr. Brice Harris, our State Chancellor for the California Community Colleges. I don't have a prepared introduction. I asked him for one, and he refused to provide anything because he knows that his name and his legacy speaks for itself. So with that, Dr. Brice Harris.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ortiz, and thank all of you for allowing me a little time on your program this morning. I especially appreciate the attendance of all the board members, the college presidents, but most importantly, all of you on the faculty and staff who show up each and every day to fulfill the mission not only of the Peralta Community College system, but of the system of California community colleges. As is the case with Dr. Ortiz, I work for a appointed Board of Governors from the state of California, and it's a pleasure to have one of those members in the audience today. You heard his name passed over a moment ago, but Dr. Joseph Belinsky is on the Board of Governors. Joseph, thank you for being here. You know, as I begin fall convocations, yesterday I had the pleasure of speaking at San Francisco's convocation, and tomorrow in the South Bay area, and next week down in Santa Barbara. I am reminded of my own experience as a young faculty member way more time ago than I'd like to admit. But I found humor in the classroom as a faculty member, but no humor could compare to that of my wife, who is an elementary teacher. She's a 5th grade teacher, and she provides all my good speech material. The one I'm most favorite of is she had a young woman in her class named Giovanna, who was one of those precocious kinds of students that will be in your classroom someday. And Giovanna was pretty creative and pushed the envelope most of the time. And one day she came up to my wife and said, "You know, Ms. Harris, I really don't feel very well. I think I'm going to throw up." And my wife said, "Oh, don't do that, Giovanna. Stand right there. I'll be right back, and I'll take you to the office." And she turned to the class and she said, "You all line up over there. I'm going to take Giovanna to the office, and I'll be right back." And Giovanna said, "Ms. Harris, why are they lining up?" And Barbara said, "Well, we're going to lunch." And Giovanna said, "Well, I think I can wait till after lunch to throw up." So as I give you can't make this stuff up. As I give convocation speeches, I always ask if you would wait till after I finish to get sick. I'd really appreciate it. You know, throughout my presentation this morning will be interspersed photographs of the people we all work for, our students. These are done by a colleague of mine, James West, at Cosumnes River College, a photography faculty member. And I like to put these in because I do think they help all of us remember why we show up every day. We don't need to be reminded, but it's good to know that we're all constantly reminded of the importance of the 2.4 million students in this system. When I was planning for convocation comments, I did think a lot about the challenges facing our state, and I think Dr. Ortiz in his comments underlined those, and they really do involve restoring access in this California community college system and enhancing student success. And that, of course, happens up and down the state, but it starts right at the local level where all of the colleges in the Peralta district show up each day designed to do just that, to improve access to our colleges and to try to enhance student success. Now, when we start looking at those, we hear this question often asked in recent years. Why is everyone suddenly so interested in American higher education? Those of us who are in higher education have been saying for decades that this country is being increasingly challenged, and yet we couldn't seem to get policymakers and elected officials and others, the media, to pay attention. Well, they have started to pay attention, and here is why. When you look at the OECD study on American competitiveness, you see that in the 55 to 64-year-old cohort, us oldsters like me, and by the way, I only get to spend another month in that cohort. I guess I become irrelevant after that point. But among those older adults, we are third in the globe in terms of higher educational attainment. However, as the population gets more and more youthful, the 45 to 54, we drop to fifth in the globe. The 35 to 44, we're sixth, and this is a couple of years old. And fortunately now, in the 25 to 34, those folks coming right out of college, we are 14th in the globe in terms of our percentage of the population with higher education attainment. Now, when you drill down a little bit further, and this may seem complicated, but if you look at it, it's pretty simple. This triangle shows that young population, the 25 to 34-year-old group, and the square shows that oldster crowd that I'm still in for a while. And when you look at the countries, this is the global average in that regard. When you look at the countries that exceed the global average, Korea as an example, among the older crowd, obviously those folks who experienced higher education decades ago, they only had about 13% of their population who had higher education attainment. But look at the progress they have made. Now, among that younger crowd, they have about 65% of their population who have higher education attainment in that cohort. So when you look at all of the ones that exceed the global average, you can see that most of those countries have made progress. Only two of them, Israel and the United States of America, have basically sat still. In fact, for the first time in the history of this country, we have a generation coming up out of our colleges that stands to be less educated than their parents. That is why policymakers are paying attention. It's why President Obama, in his State of the Union message last year, said we have to both have more students going to college and we have to have them succeeding at greater and greater rates. So those two challenges, restoring access and improving student success, are the ones that face our system. So that basically is shorthand for that, is getting bigger and better at the same time. And we all know that getting bigger and improving quality simultaneously is a challenge. It doesn't make any difference, by the way, if you're General Motors or if you're a mom and pop store. If you're trying to improve the quality of your product and grow your organization or your company at the same time, it's hard to do that. And it's especially difficult to do it without enough money, which is where we have been for the last several years. We're trying to accommodate more students, help them succeed at higher rates, and yet we don't have the resources to do that. Well, then you sort of have to say, why do community colleges matter in California when you look at the national picture? Well, very simply put, if you look at public higher education in this country, 1 out of every 5 students in a public community college in this country is enrolled in one of our colleges in California. And when you look at all of public higher education, 1 out of every 10 students in this country is enrolled in a California community college. So the truth is, we need to get this right. That old adage about as goes California, so goes the country, I would argue pretty vehemently that as go California's community colleges, so goes American higher education, and at least indirectly, American competitiveness. So this is a seminal moment for all of us. We have to figure out a way how to improve access and success at the same time. So then, how are we doing? Well, the news on access is certainly not good. As all of you know, we've had a horrible last 4 years. We saw our high water mark of enrollment back in 08, 09 with 2.9 million students in this system. And then because of terrible financial calamities in the state and the country for that matter, and a rationing of education that we've had to go through in recent years, we now have dropped down last year to 2.4 million students. That number may even drop a little bit lower in the current year as we begin to bottom out and start back up again. Now, frankly, we turned away more than 600,000 students from this system over the last 4 years. That is a terrible tragedy for California, but more importantly for the students. And yet, had it not been for you, it would have been worse. Look at these two charts. When you drill down into the numbers, if you look at 06, 07 as a base year, our classes that we offered are down 16%. That's how much rationing went on in our system. And yet, during that same time, our average class size went up by 15%. So the truth is, were it not for the faculty taking more students in every class, and the classified staff with longer lines in admissions and financial aid in the library and everywhere else on our campus, the number of 600,000 would most likely have been in excess of 1 million statewide had it not been for you all stepping up and serving more and more students during this very difficult financial time. So what about success? Well, the success indicators in our system are now chronicled in a new tool that we rolled out in May called the Student Success Scorecard. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I encourage you to go either to the Peralta District website, probably the website of each of the colleges, or the Chancellor's Office website, and you'll find that little logo. And click on it. It will show you the statewide averages on those 5 key indicators of success. Completion's one of them, career tech education, remediation, 30 units, all those indicators. And then you can literally click on any one of the colleges and look at how they're doing in that regard. Now, this is the point in the program where, as an old speech teacher, I used to say to my students, when you push the button and the chart doesn't appear, you just have to go on as if it's up there. So what you should envision right here is a chart. What you should envision here is a chart that shows how we're doing in terms of completion, which is really one of the key indicators of success. And the news there is mixed. It is very good in that if you look statewide at the average, if students come to us as college students, they come without any need of remediation, then they succeed in excess of 70%. And that is a number that is competitive with many selective institutions in this country, and something of which we should be very proud. However, the next chart, which you also can't see, will show you the troubling news, and that is that if students come to us unprepared to go to college, in need of remediation, their chances of success drop below 42%. Now, this chart, which you can see, shows you why that is such a problem for us. It says that only 1/4 of our students, actually less than 1/4 of our students, come to us as college students. In fact, 77% of them need remediation in either math or English or both. And that is why we are so challenged in terms of improving student success. Now, ours is not to take a lot of time blaming high schools or parents or the economy or anything else. The fact is, this is the product that's coming in our front door, and we have to figure out a way to deal with that product. So, what then can we do to enhance student success? What can we do to improve access? Well, the Proposition 30, and you heard the leader of your faculty union talk about how important that measure was earlier. The truth is, statewide, this measure is absolutely going to allow us to begin to restore access and improve student success. Thankfully, that access means adding back some of the classes we've had to cut over the last several years. Now, the trick is to add back the right classes. One of the things the legislature said to us as we were downsizing this system over the last several years was that they wanted us to cut those classes around the periphery. In other words, try to take out as much of the avocational courses, the personal interest courses as possible, and to keep those core courses in remedial education, career technical education, and transfer education. And we did a pretty good job of that. The trick when we begin to add those classes back then is to start by adding those very same classes back, the ones students need the most to complete their degrees and their certificates. And by the way, that does not undervalue physical education and the arts. I will tell you, two of the biggest industries in the state of California are physical education and recreation and the arts. And so those are just as important to our students as are many other programs that we teach on a day-to-day basis. Now, when we start adding back classes, what does Prop 30 mean? Well, last year, the first modest installment meant we were able to add back classes for about 20,000 students. And this year that we're just finished up, we were able to add back classes, or we're in now, I should say, for about another 40+ thousand students system-wide. Now, again, keeping in mind that we lost 600,000 students in this downturn, that doesn't seem like much, basically a 10% down payment on restoration of access. But we do have some downward pressures on our enrollment. High school graduation rates are flattening out some. And obviously, especially here in the Bay Area, the economy is recovering, unemployment is dropping, and that tends to provide some downward pressure on our enrollment as well. So we will, I think, in the next 4 to 5 years, because Prop 30 is going to add money for access every year, probably be able to restore much of the access we've lost in the next few years. Now, in terms of student success, the Board of Governors in January of last year unanimously supported a series of 22 recommendations from their Student Success Task Force. And I'm not going to take time to go through all of those. I'm sure you're glad to hear that. But I do want to highlight a few of them. One of them is having to do with K-12 and the core curriculum. It's called Smarter Balance in California. The key is for us, and we've begun this work up and down the state, faculty to faculty, working with K-12 to try to smooth that transition between junior and senior year in high school and higher education. We need to get some legislation written that will allow us to get back into those high schools teaching college courses to seniors in high school. Many of those seniors, unfortunately, finish their English and math their sophomore and junior year. They don't take any English and math their senior year, and then people wonder why they need remediation after having been out of those courses for a year and a half. So we need to get into the high schools down in that senior year, beginning to teach college courses to those seniors to give them a leg up on college, and for many of them to help them understand college really can be in their future, students that otherwise wouldn't think that. Obviously, common assessment, not necessarily a common instrument, but more a common approach to assessment so that students don't have to take assessment tests at each and every one of our colleges, because many of our students happen to be quite portable and transportable. They move around the state a lot. We're going to see increased orientation and educational planning. That's going to be automated with online ed planning systems. I think you'll see more and more mandatory orientation and ed planning as time goes on. We're going to encourage students to declare a program of study or a major as early as possible, because again, research suggests that even if they change that major 3 times, if they are self-directed with a goal, they tend to succeed in higher and higher rates. And obviously, the Board of Governors has already done some enrollment prioritization to encourage students to complete their degrees and get on to the world of work or to a senior institution. Many of our students were collecting way too many units, which they ended up losing when they made transfer to the next level. In addition to that, the Board of Governors this year will take a look at its fee waiver policy and probably will implement some academic standards for students to stay on BOG fee waivers. By the way, our students will almost always get over the hurdles we set for them as long as we give them the support necessary to get there. And academic standards for BOG fee waivers is a good example of exactly that. We are going to encourage students to attend full time, and you do this not by sort of forcing them to do that, but telling them to spend more time in financial aid understanding what their options are. Many of them can get more BOG fee waivers, more Pell Grants, and actually can help pay for living expenses so they can go full-time, get through their education much quicker, and actually with very little debt as a result of that. And we know that students that attend full-time tend to succeed, again, in higher and higher rates. Basic skills and remedial education, we simply have to get that right. If you look at the statistics on the scorecard, especially in math, and you drill down by race and ethnicity, by gender and age, you see some very troubling gaps in student performance that we simply have to close. We have to get all students to do better, but we especially have to close those performance gaps, especially the ones that are most problematic with male students, and especially those that are Latino and African American students. We have to figure out a way to do a better job supporting those students in their education. Now, there are some good boutique programs up and down the state, right here in this district, by the way, but what we have yet to do is figure out how to scale those successful programs up to 2.4 million students statewide. That's going to be a top priority of the Board of Governors, and I know the faculty up and down the state in coming months. We are going to need to look at statewide goals. We're going to be coming forward to the Board of Governors in November of this year and asking them to look at setting goals for those completion measures, those success measures, and then we hope colleges will emulate that by setting goals at the local level. As is always the case, if you set a goal for something, you tend to improve your performance as a result of that. And then, of course, you've already seen the fact that the scorecard is finally allowing us to benchmark ourselves against our past performance and improve not only statewide, but on a college-by-college basis. So improving student success means that those numbers need to actually move. And I think when you consider the future, if we look back 5 years from now and we see that, for example, we haven't seen those performance gaps closed, then we have to admit we've failed. I'm going to share with you in a moment some investments the state's willing to make in this initiative, but as they do, we have to prove that those investments were wise and that those numbers actually do move and those performance gaps in the overall performance of our students improve. So let's turn our attention to how we can afford these improvements. You heard a Cliff Notes version earlier of a better budget year, and it certainly was one. We got about 1.63% for restoration of access this year statewide, another almost $89.5 million. In addition to that, for the first time in 5 years, we got a COLA, 1.57%, about $87.5 million. Now, that does not yet close the gap for all the COLA over the last 5 years that we've lost, and so we'll be working for some kind of super COLA in the future to try to help do that. In addition to that, the legislature funded a pretty good dose in categoricals, and the first one of those is the one I wanted to mention again, and that is $50 million that the state has put in to implementing that student success recommendations that we talked about a moment ago. So the state actually is putting their money where their mouth is. They want to see students' success improved, and they're beginning to fund that student success. In addition to that, we finally begin to partially restore the terrible cuts that we've experienced in DSP&S, EOP&S, and CalWorks. So in that regard, the future is a bit better. Now, you all may know that during this terrible financial time, one of the things the state did was move our revenue from one year to the other. It's sort of like using a credit card, and they got into that credit card to the tune of about $961 million for California community colleges. They have to pay that credit card off, and they have already paid that down to about $592 million. So about 40% has been paid back, and we expect that to get paid off in the next 2 or 3 years. In addition to that, they funded $30 million of deferred maintenance and instructional equipment, and the FTES share of that will come right here to Peralta. That's the first time in several years that we've had any deferred maintenance and instructional equipment money. And we were very pleased that they finally backfilled some of the statewide academic senate's budget cuts. Even though it's a modest number, it's an important one. In addition to that, the governor is very interested in the way adult education is delivered in California. He had a new plan he tried to implement The legislature didn't go along with that. They basically said, hey, let's take a look at it. So they funded a 2-year, $25 million regional planning process to take a look at K-12 and community colleges and the way adult ed is managed and delivered in this state. I think that will be a very interesting process, and I suspect it will ultimately result in our community colleges taking over more and more of adult education in the state. I think it'll be narrowed somewhat, but this is an important conversation that will go on. In addition to that, as you know, the governor is a big fan of online education. We've worked hard to try to help him understand that about 15% of our offerings are already online. We are really the largest online provider in the western part of the United States, and I don't want the governor to lose sight of that. However, he wants that accelerated, and the legislature agreed with him. They put $17 million into this, and what we're going to do with that is to create a statewide portal so that students can access the online education that takes place across the state at all of our colleges. What we're not going to do is take a statewide approach to the creation of online education. That needs to be done at the colleges with the faculty leading that. All we're going to try to do is make it easier for students in one part of the state who can't get an online course they need to be able to get that at another college without having to apply to 72 districts in order to do that. In addition to that, the Sustainability Proposition 39 will generate about $47 million for California's community colleges. It's a little unclear how that's going to be spent yet. It probably will be put out on an FTES basis, so that certainly is good news for us. Now, there are some concerns for the future of our funding, and of course, you know that there's always another shoe to drop. This shows you how much of our resources California's community colleges received from general fund apportionment over back in the 08-09 year. So about 2/3 of our money came to us from the regular general fund. And those other parts, the property tax 31% and the enrollment fees 4%, as we all know, are not always dependable, because unlike K-12, we don't get those automatically backfilled. And if fees come up short or property taxes come up short, we often get stuck holding the bag. Unfortunately, the trend, now that Prop 30 has passed, is even worse. Now, if you look at our funding in 12-13, only about 1/3 of it comes from general fund. Now we have the property taxes here at 36%, enrollment fees at 7%, Prop 30 at 16%, and this RDA backfill that we've been stuck with at another 6%. So as you can tell, with this kind of volatility in our funding, we're saying to the Department of Finance, we need the same backup that K-12 has, what's called continuing resolution funding. In K-12, if any of these things comes up short, they just make it up out of the general fund. With community colleges, they argue with us at each point along the way, and we may or may not get it backfilled. So this is a very troubling future that we need to pay a lot of attention to. The other thing that we need to be mindful of is that Prop 30 is not forever. In fact, the sales tax will expire in 2016, and the income tax will expire in 2018. Now, do I think it'll be back on the ballot for renewal? Yes, I do. And do I think that our students and faculty and staff who passed Prop 30 the last time will be out in force to get it passed again? Yeah, I do. But from a planning point of view, we have to understand this cliff is looming in our future. So when you look at the future then, you have to ask the question, are better days really ahead? And I think they certainly are. I happen to be very bullish on our system. I think our future is bright. I do believe we're going to be able to restore access in years to come. I absolutely think student success is going to improve. I think two more areas that we're going to get a lot of attention and support are in career and technical education and in workforce education. Those are very closely related, but involve different approaches to working with business and industry and to training our students. I also believe online education is going to impact a portion of all of our students' education as opposed to only a small portion of our students taking all of their education that way. I think you will see an expansion of online education, and I believe the hard work you all have already done in adding more than 800 transfer degrees in the last 18 months. And we expect that number will be close to 1,600 by this time next year. These are 1440 transfer degrees, are going to really improve transfer in California. So those dual opportunities or challenges we face, success and access, those are competing core values when you don't have enough money. It's up to us to figure out, with the use of Prop 30 and the local kinds of revenue that you passed here in the Peralta district, how to get those two working parallel. We simply have to rise to the challenge that the President and other policy makers have laid at our feet, and that is to educate more students and to help them be more successful than they have been in the past. It is a horrendously big challenge for all of us, and it reminds me of one more story of Giovanna in her my wife's classroom at the end of a particularly long day when most of the students had left and Barbara was sort of crumpled at her desk, exhausted. Giovanna's still around and came up and put her arm around Barbara's shoulder and said, "You know, Ms. Harris, you'd feel a whole lot better if you just put on some lipstick and comb your hair." Now, unfortunately, I don't think that'll work for us. We do have some challenges ahead of us, but I am optimistic that with the voters' support of Prop 30 and with the creativity and the drive of the faculty and staff that we have, I am constantly in awe of the work that you do. I will tell you, I've been in this job since November. I've so far had no public experience where anybody has done anything other than come up to me and say, "You know, my son or daughter or I had our lives changed because of California's community colleges." I don't think people generally understand and appreciate what we do, but I do know that we are changing the lives of literally millions of people in this state on a day-to-day basis because of the work you do. I genuinely appreciate your work, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you very much. Thank you. I do want to take this opportunity to field a question or two, so if any of you have a question, by all means, don't be bashful.
I have a mic right here.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Peralta is known for serving what I consider now to be the regular student. Yeah, the word or phrase about having boutique programs was used. Chancellor, I want to stress to you that Peralta and Merit has programs that are innovative, programs that serves Latino students, programs that serves African American students, our Asian population students, students that were incarcerated. These are not boutique programs. These are programs that individuals with innovation created. And with that comes the challenge of promoting and supporting faculty and staff that are innovative in their approach to serving students, to create student success. So what I would like to see is encouragement with our unions in the challenge that I think as an administrator for the past 20 years regarding release time. Because I think what administrators, CEOs, others, and CBOs are challenged is we have individuals that are trying to do the right thing in serving students to complete, but it does cost money. And we haven't found positions. You know, our faculty, our classified, sometimes considers that kind of work administrative work. You know, it truly comes back to work that helps our students succeed.
Well, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when I use the term boutique programs, I don't mean to minimize the quality of those programs. That's where the innovation is taking place. The challenge we're facing is to take those programs that unfortunately are only able to serve a few hundred students and ramp them up to serve a few 100,000 students. And you are absolutely right in that it is hard for all of us to come to work every day and know what we could do to help students succeed at higher rates and yet not have the resources available to do that. Even with Prop 30, we are still a resource-starved system. There's no doubt about that. So what we have to do is try to find those programs that are working with small numbers of students and figure out how to get the resources directed to them to ramp those up to serve even more and more students. So the creativity, the innovation, the genius that's necessary to make this work is certainly in the hands and hearts and heads of the faculty. And it's our job as managers to try to figure out how to get the money to the faculty so we can get that done. Yes, sir. Hello, Eric.
Career and technical application. Wait for the mic, please. They already have somebody on the mic. Okay.
I'll give it to you. I just wanted to follow up on the comments on these small programs. I'm also at Merit and in one of those programs. And is there going to be a sort of brainstorming group or anything that we could be involved in about bringing these to scale? Because that gap in the infrastructure has been something we've been looking at.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the recommendations of the task force was for us to figure out a way to facilitate statewide conversations on programs that are working. Otherwise, we end up reinventing the wheel over and over again. So we're scheduled to work with the Statewide Academic Senate to try to find ways to get those successful practices out, and then to have a conversation, which we've already started in a couple of ways, about how to get more money from the legislature to fund some of those programs or to redirect some of our existing expenditures toward them. So yes, we absolutely have to figure out a way to not only let folks know what's working, but to find a way to attract the money to scale it up.
All right. I was interested in the whole aspect of K-12 outreach. I think that's a key component that we really need to emphasize, particularly as it relates to remediation, faculty-to-faculty conversations, but also in terms of career information for students at an earlier level so that we can help them make some of those decisions early on relative to them putting together an SEP and declaring those academic areas or pathways that they'd like to move into at an earlier stage. Many of our students come to our institution, as you know, they don't even know what they don't know. And so if we had earlier outreach activities, I think that would help us tremendously. Again, leveraging that in terms of scale is important.
Well, I couldn't, again, I can't disagree with that. One of the things that happened in California about a decade or more ago was because of the abuses of concurrent enrollment in a couple of institutions. The legislature did what they are so good at, which is when one member does something wrong, they pass a law that negatively impacts all 112 colleges, and they did that on concurrent enrollment. It's time now for us to go back and get that undone, for us to be able to go on high school campuses during the day and offer these courses. I think for two reasons. One, because it does help students keep their skills from going fallow, but more importantly, a lot of young people that are in a high school don't see college in their future because they don't think they are college material. If we can get them in a college level class during their senior year in high school, and as a part of that, talk with them about financial aid and what's available, I think a lot more of them will see, hey, you know what, I can be a college student. But we can't do that until we get the legislature to revise that concurrent enrollment law and allow us to do that. You know, when you look at the statistics on success and you see that if a student comes to us without need of remediation, they succeed in excess of 70% of the time. And if they come in need of remediation, it drops down to 42%. there really are two battlefronts there. On the one hand, we need to do a better job on remediation and developmental education. But on the other hand, we need to try to get more students in the coming to college prepared category, because immediately that jumps up their success dramatically. And I think a lot of students come to us, realize they are in need of remediation, they get discouraged, maybe they do take some remediation courses, they drop out. We need to figure out a way to smooth that transition so they go right into college level work. Many of them have the skills to do that, and we have to figure out a way to make that more seamless. One more question.
Hi, I'm right here. I was wondering, what's your view on nursing programs, and what do you think the future holds with them? I manage a nursing program. They're very costly with the student-faculty ratio, and also there's not a lot of jobs like there were before. So I was wondering what the future is for the state on funding these nursing programs so they can stay sustainable.
Well, not only nursing, but healthcare in general. I think there are two or three things to keep in mind. One is that nursing specifically, and some of the other healthcare areas, there is increasing pressure to make the bachelor's degree the entry level into that profession. And so I have appointed a task force that's being chaired by Barry Russell to take a look at the community college baccalaureate. There are 23 states in the country that now have the community college applied baccalaureate, and many of them are in the healthcare areas. Many of them are in nursing. The National Board of Registered Nursing is the most vehement about making the bachelor's degree the entry level. So the truth is, we train 80% of the nurses in the state. The state can't afford to just have some switch clicked and have all ADN nurses sort of not be able to join the workforce. So I think the state's commitment to nursing is going to remain strong. All we're seeing now in this temporary downturn in employment in nursing is an echo of the economy going bad, and a lot of nurses that would have retired staying in the profession for 2 or 3 more years because they're fearful of retiring. As the economy recovers, those people are going to go out in droves. And in fact, I've had conversations with hospital CEOs who are terrified of where they're going to get nurses 2 and 3 and 5 years from now. So I think the state will continue to support it. I think we have to take a hard look at the baccalaureate degree, and I think the job market's going to come back in the near future. Let me, before I wind up, let me tell you, because you seem to enjoy them, one more story about Javon in my wife's classroom. You know, one day in the classroom, they were looking at ads in old magazines. Barbara was teaching about history, and they were looking at women's fashion in magazines of the 50s and things of that kind. And Javon turned to Barbara and said, "Mrs. Harris, did they used to dress like that when you were alive?" So, these jobs may kill all of us, but we'll go with a smile on our face. Thank you all very much for your time.